I created an account for your group this morning to allow you to log into the application and download a license. This will let you run the application in both a GM or a host and a client configuration. So just to show you how you download, you put in the username and the password. Dimitri has the information. So pressing OK, and this will show you this interface here where you can then download your license. This can be downloaded to as many computers as you want. So as for your development purpose, whatever you need to do, you'll only be able to run one host per computer, but in theory, you can host from multiple places at the same time on the same license. It's not terribly secure in that regard. It does check in, but it's not a big deal. And then you can run a player client without having this license. Let me log off here. And so when you join as a PC, you just need to make sure that the alias is something different than the GM. So the GM is going to show up as GM or host, and you set a different alias. So here, and then when I click OK, it will connect. Here, the host, which is on this side right here, will receive a notice announcing that a new player is opted to join. When you say OK, it'll synchronize the content. And for now, I'm going to close this one because we don't need to have two of the players. So what I have set up here is a very simple configuration where we have a host on the left-hand side and a client on the right. When the host moves a character, we can see the movement is posted after the movement is completed. Give you a very quick walkthrough of the user interface. The roster is a way to quickly select and center the view onto a given character. The host has a very comprehensive menu allowing them to interact with the space in various ways, drawing or creating light blocking objects, or introduce new characters, access a library of maps and tokens. They can also pull up their own set of dice, and by clicking on the core dice, you see here in the game log, the results of a roll is presented on both sides. Because this is a GM roll, a host roll, it's hidden from players unless the host opts to share that information. Whereas if a player or client rolls, their roll is immediately broadcast to the GM and the host, and they're able to see the results of the roll. All connected clients can see client rolls, so these aren't secret. The character data is associated on a token, just to give you, so if we right-click on a token and go to edit, or just press the E key with a selected token, it'll pull up the character sheet. This is a free-floating window, so it's natively decorated currently, and most of the red elements here are buttons that can be pressed to instantiate a role. That, again, this is presented through the chat log as a way for folks to see what the results of the roles are and things of that nature. The data here is formatted very brute force method in the code. These are actually instantiated as line entries and built using very traditional swing form building. We have a updated version where if you double click on the character here, you'll see a newer version. This is not the newer version. Okay, hold on a second. Sorry. I'm going to switch the game. So I'll reconnect these real quick, and then you'll see the full connection as well.
Okay. Do you run two copies of the same thing, or you run on several computers?
So I'm running on one. Well, you can run on multiple computers. You can run on the same computer. So when I'm running a session for a local group, meaning that I have friends who have come over to my house, for instance, I'll actually run a session on one computer and have a separate monitor for the player view. Let's run a second copy here. So this one will join. Okay. Sorry about that. So now if we double click on this character, this is the new form here, which is, and so just to give you the comparison, I'm pressing E on the character to pull up the old style character sheet. And this is the new form of the summary page. It's this information that I'm suggesting that we migrate to this format here. So we place all of these tabs with an editable version of this format here. And this still has the same functionality. It's just not currently decorated. So clicking on the on these entries here, such as the strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, results in roles that are broadcast between the two. In this case, I have the host set up to be public. So actions made by the host are visible by the client. So you can see the major difference here is this format is designed to allow us to go in and create new entries. If we wanted to create a new attack, such as hacking, and we can go in and set a type to be some value of, this is number of dice with some modifier, and we can add various types to the damage. This is not something that you have to worry about directly. This is more specific to the rules themselves. But all of these entries are currently modifiable, and these pop-up editors would likely need to be attached either here, or we can see about just formatting, ways to expand the formatting here. We'll see in the code, if I can locate this quickly. Let's see. I was working in the live server. And I'm not quite as familiar as I'd like to be yet with where everything lives. So yes. So I'm just going to do a quick search. If that'll actually result in what I'm looking for. So the way that this is defined is very kludgy in my opinion. It's not very elegant, and I don't know if there's an alternate solution. I haven't found this specific code here yet. Matt is going to give me the information on where to find that. Actually, this is just in the creature template.
You're saying that you haven't found how HTML is built, but
this one, yeah. So this isn't actually HTML, unfortunately.
Okay.
This is still Swing, apparently.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
I was mistaken. I thought that we were moving this to an HTML format, but that apparently hadn't happened yet.
Okay, but you haven't found this new approach in sources, but you...
Yeah, so Matt has, here, let me see if I can, yes, creature console template. That's what we need. So I haven't had a chance to review this. That's actually where this is. So the console creature template. This is actually where this is being defined in the console creature template. But I haven't had a chance to review this yet. So I'm not as familiar with how this is, but it is a Swing. So anyway, let me I'll stick to the overview and then come back to doing trying to relate it to the code. So this is one of the major places where a player interacts with their character. The definitions here, such as attacks, feats, skills, items, and so on, are what allow the character to perform actions. So when a player presses the attack button, for instance, those attacks are presented to them in an action framework, and they're able to select something. And this presents the, let me do it from the player side. Assign ownership here. Okay, they're all publicly owned. So if I press A for attack, choose the blinding arrow, for instance, and select a target, on the client side, the GM is presented with the order of the action. This character is attacking this character with this ability. A die roll is made, plus whatever their modifier is, which is calculated from their character sheet. And then that gives the GM a total, which they visually compare against the total here. And the reason for not automating this is that there can be many extenuating circumstances in the game that change whether this is a success or failure, or the kind of success or failure. And this allows the GM to, or the host of the game, the person running the game, to interact with the players verbally and make a decision. So, for instance, where according to the rules, in the rules automation, this would be a hit. I could still say that it's a miss. A miss is decorated with this, the dashed lines. Can try try something different here. Same thing comes through. This time the host says that it's a hit. The action framework goes into a resolve damage, and damage is resolved and then displayed on the target. So you can also queue up abilities, or attacks or actions. So I could come in and I could actually take actions from multiple places, and we don't force the actions to be specifically like on a range or something like that. That kind of rules is not what we're concerned about. And then you can see that here in the action framework, we actually have tabs that now allow, we're looking at all the actions that have been passed to the host that need to be resolved. And so then the host can come in very quickly and say, miss, and we'll just say that one's a critical. And the results are then queued up. So that's a very brief look also at the action framework. The other framework that's of particular interest is the decision framework. This one is used for...
Tobias,
yes.
one question, okay?
Sure, of course.
It's just very, it's just very interesting. What do you mean by saying action framework? Like, is it, when you say this, it means that it's a set of, it's a set of UI, user interface, allowing to do those things, and a set of logic behind, something like that?
It's a combination of UI and logic. So in this case, the attacks here are defined. So things that are on this attack panel become available to the player as attack types. And those are handled using this special UI, the action UI, which allows for these adjustments and modifications that are specific to this kind of action.
Okay, so it's more related to user interface, right, in general?
Exactly. And it'll make a little bit, you'll understand the separation a little more when I show you the second framework as well. But yes, no, definitely good to ask questions. Don't hesitate. So in the decision framework is for handling things like abilities and spells. So things, and really all of these can be defined as abilities. This is really ignoring the rules element. They are a type of thing that has a different kind of framework here. You can see the UI decoration is different. The way that each ability is actually editable through a fairly complex user interface that allows for things to be positive or negative, to change various elements of the game rules or mechanics for a period of time. can set a duration to be instantaneous, meaning that it happens once and then is immediately reverted back to whatever the original state was. Lasts a number of turns or rounds, and then you can set the number of rounds, for instance, or game turns. Set real world minutes, so how many real world minutes, hours, or days, or game world minutes, hours, or days have to apply, or set it to infinite so it lasts forever. And so this allows you to go through and build out very complex actions that can affect the stats or the statistics, which is how a character or a player's representation is affected in the world. So things that affect these core statistics, these elements here, have major repercussions on all of their attacks, on many of the stats on this page, the other numbers here. And so those are things that we track and automate with our current system. And when I say system in this case, I mean just D20PRO, the current application, automates a lot of the number crunching and math behind the scenes that happens with these kind of games. And unfortunately, this ability frame, the decision framework, which enables these abilities, is not actually completed. It doesn't have any persistence. And so I would have to go through and create every ability for each and every one of the characters that I want to introduce to the game. It has this concept that there should be the ability to load abilities, to load these effects or save them. This just doesn't work. It just doesn't function in a way that is. And so this is something that we're looking to fix. This is a major item on our list. In addition, there is a spell system which is very similar to. So there's two pieces to the spells. Spells in this case are a special kind of ability that lets you go through and have this in a list. So if we say okay, if we go to this character now, let me get rid of this page. You'll see that this character has a list of spells that are available to them that they can perform as actions, and that then presents a decision framework which we could modify. And so what we want to be able to do instead of, so right now, let me just try to explain this. It's somewhat difficult. Right now, these spells have no way in this user interface for us to perform this definition where we define what is the effect of this thing on the game world. And so what people are forced to do is to go through and use each of those powers and define them through here in the decision framework, whereas we clearly have that capability already in the engine to do this on the character sheet and make all the modifications we need and then have that persist. And that's what we're looking to do with the spell page, is attach the ability changes to spells as well, so they can be defined using the ability, the decision framework properly. But just to give you how this works, so when I've selected this ability, there's a click to target, and then you're able to go through and select a number of targets, and that they show up in this list, and then pressing OK and pressing OK again. In this case, because I did it from the judge, there was a whole bunch of OKs that I had to press. And then the results are presented down here, which in this case is just text, right? There's no game effect because the spells aren't properly attached to the ability framework or to the ability descriptions in the decision framework. So Vajra, Slayer casts Flare, and this stuff doesn't actually happen. Again, similar to the attacks. This character doesn't have anything like that. Let's see if they have the ability. Yeah. similar to the attacks, the decision framework is able to queue multiple actions that are being performed by different characters and allows the host to go through and manage them, either to cancel them or to accept them. And then there's certain decoration that occurs when effects are presented. So for instance, this character is currently under the effects of what is a blur and chicken, which are, if we double click on them, this shows up under the effects. And these are caused by the decision framework. So when an ability can cause a status, we call these status effects, and then they're applied to the targets. So that's a very high level look at it. And I know that that's probably relatively confusing. So definitely ask questions so I can try to make it more clear.
I think all of us should start reading D20 Rules, this SRD, and just start playing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really, I think if you read more, because I actually did this, I read about D20, I read about SRD, about history of Dungeons and Dragons, and I feel that it's worth here to involve a little bit into logic, how it's done and so on. But in general, what you show, it's understandable. Mm-hmm.
And so then let me talk about our objectives and how they align with what I've shown you. So again, just to reiterate, one of our core objectives is to expand the spell system so it's able to utilize this ability, so we can define the ability associated with each of the spell entries. The ability to save, so the capability of the application to save not just a single entry, but to actually save and import a list of defined abilities,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
which should also include spells defined as abilities. This should also actually include feats, which currently these are 100% just text. So these have no impact at all on any of the system mechanics, but they are supposed to. And right now they simply are a straight text entry system to just relate that a character has one of these things. So feats, spells, and abilities are all actually just abilities with a different type, a name. So my thought is that we would have the ability name, an ability type, and then the amount is a frequency. This is the how often can you use it, and at will per day. This should also just have a constant. So like a feed is a constant; it's always on, and then number of times per unit, and then the actual function here.
Mm-hmm.
So this is probably the largest amount of effort
Mm-hmm.
to enhance the capabilities of this. But doing so will actually allow us to define rules. Many of the rules for different game systems can be defined as a collection of abilities, that they're capabilities, if you will, of the player in the game system. And so by expanding and having this ability system functional, it enables us with the capability in the application to change the look and feel of the character sheet, and a versatile ability panel. Then we're now able to define new rule systems very easily, and new capabilities for the players to interact with the world.
Okay, Tobias, can you thank you. Can you, so can you show us in the current system what you're showing, some examples of rules, or maybe you will tell us, like
Sure.
you just said, okay, rules, it's capabilities of player. Let's define some rule.
As an example, if I move this character right? And I'm going to ignore the graphic here. So, as I move this character along, you can see the mover element above shows that that the character has moved 40 feet. And this is 2 times, meaning this is 2 times their movement. And if we continue to move, we can go, let's say, so 60 is actually 2 times their movement, and I know that. But now, as we get further along, you can see that now they've moved 3 times their available movement. So this is a case where we're showing a rule for this given system that says that a character with a speed of 30, this speed defines how far a character can move, but we don't enforce that rule. We notify you that you've done 3 times as much as you're supposed to, or you're into your 3rd time of moving effectively. Does that make sense? And this is a very simple version, but again, this is one of the things that comes up very often in these kind of games. So now we're so far over, we're at this 5 times, that we're saying this is extremely unusual. So we decorate it in red and indicate that, so the GM or the host notices, and the host has the capability to cancel the movement on their side. So when a player comes in and does things, let's not do that yet. I'll show you that in a moment. The host is able to say, no, that's not allowed. You can't do that. The core rules that are being automated are related to these saving throws. So let's, if you look here at the game log on this side, a bit closer, as the saving throws are performed, this element is given. Making saving throws is a major part of role-playing games, and resisting damage or attacks or things like that. It's definitely a combat strategy is really when the rules automation comes into play. So that also means that being able to come in and issue attacks, this is part of the rules automation. This character has 2 attacks, one at +10 and one at +5, that is being generated by a combination of the character's class, which being above 6th level means that he gets 2 attacks with weapons, and then the attack itself. So if we look at the Steel Heart one here, we'll say the 2-handed one. Again, this is unfortunate. We can't really see everything at the same time. The 1d10 +4 slashing. This has rules impact in that if we had a character who had what is called damage resistance, which is put in here, we can say damage reduction, say 20, and make it versus slashing. What's that? In order to hit this character and do damage, you need to have a slashing attack, and they ignore the first 20 points of damage from anything that isn't a slashing attack. So now if we take the Steel Heart and attack here, and he can attack twice, and we say the first one's a hit, damage is dealt normally, say the second one misses just for sake of argument, and then this character, who I believe has arrows, these are piercing weapons. So if we give this attack and say that it's a hit, you'll see it does 0 damage, even though it was said it was a hit, because of the damage resistance, the DR. So this is an example of where the rules automation comes into play to manage the combat. And yes, this is where it's a little convoluted. It requires some familiarity with the rules to understand the automation component, which is why what I'm hoping we can accomplish is to build a framework that will enable us to build rules, since I definitely know that we're a lot more familiar on this end with the rules, or at least to be able to assist in guiding rules creation, so that way it's being represented properly. So I think we had talked yesterday about our initial objective being to introduce the the Open Gaming License rules, the SRD rules for 5th edition, as a hard-coded thing to give you a chance to become more familiar with the system. D20PRO is the platform, and so with that in mind, we started yesterday working on a document for you that talks about what are the differences between the existing system and, sorry, I'll probably get several more of those, the existing system and the new system. I may have more than one calendar page open, which is why I was suggesting I may get more than one of those. I run several browsers at once. And so anyway, and so we should have that document ready for you by the end of day today, which will be, I think, very helpful in getting things along to a usable format.
Okay.
So other ways that the automation comes in, again, being able to handle, let's see, is it action? Yeah, items. So picking up an item. Let's go to my library, to items, and we'll drop this item down here on the map. And then I'm going to send this to the players. So this character can go in as an action and pick up the amulet. And when they do, we go back into their character sheet. Under their items, there's the amulet. And so this is not specifically rules. This is more world interaction. But this could have a weight, which could affect encumbrance, which causes penalties to be applied to attacks and movement and all sorts of other things. But maybe they have to pick up this really heavy stone and move it in order to prevent, some catastrophe, whatever. And this is where that kind of thing can come into play. The abilities, how these affect the characters. This would be a rules thing, but again, this is broken currently. This doesn't function. For instance, this ability is currently set up so the character's armor class, this string of numbers here, this should be applying a dodge bonus in this field to this character, and I'll give it some ridiculous number. And so when I click on the target and say that it's affecting that person and press OK, if we reopen the character sheet, we'll note that that's not actually the case. And if we look at their effects, it says that it's here. It's multiple of them on there currently, but that's not actually affecting the character. So if we attack, for instance, oh no, it looks like it is working now. It was not apparently working yesterday when we were testing. And so there's something buggy there in terms of showing up. But it could also just been me. I've been very sick until recently, and so yesterday was my last day on my medicine, which definitely made me a little loopy. So I could have just been mistaken about that not working. But it should show up here. However, it certainly wasn't, or certainly isn't. It's only showing up in the status entry, which I just dismissed. So there's some inconsistencies between how the ability framework affects the ability system affects what a player sees, or what the user sees. That would be nice to fix.
Okay. Tobias, can I ask a question?
Of course, yes.
The question is, do you think, so actually we analyzed, today we analyzed this D20 rules class, but it's very simple and it almost doesn't do anything. But so it's just static singletons. But do you think current code base contains these rules? I mean, if they contains just as handlers or just somewhere in a sources, or maybe we have also some examples of rules, like you see that you provided, my previous questions was about rules. You provided example with the speed, with rotations, and then you said some other words about automation. But then again, let's, in the sources here, how...
What I'm trying to do is just find the entry here where it actually defines this ability because that'll help us.
Okay. That's the way. That's the way how we navigate, right?
This is how I'm currently navigating, yes, because I'm not intimately familiar with the code yet. My access to the code is only about 4 days longer than yours.
Okay.
But this is it right here. So we can see here that here's the string of names. This is cool. So this is the.
So you think that all the logic is inside this class?
For a lot of the rules that we're seeing, for abilities, this is here. This is not going to be all the rules, but the way that Matt was suggesting that I navigate was basically to
Copy.
take some of the entries, such as if we were trying to find the rules definition for how to handle armor or things of that ilk, taking some text reference and basically searching for it. That's not my ideal, but it certainly does function. Some of these elements here, I think, are going to be related in the creature. So some of the terminology that's worth knowing is that D20PRO refers to every character, every player, monster, anything that has a stats panel as a character sheet is a creature. And so creatures are the playable characters, the playable objects in the game pieces, if you will. And so all the creatures are defined the same. There's not a difference between a monster creature and a player creature. So if we were to go into the library, for instance, and take doesn't have any. Well, here, this bird. This bird is defined exactly the same way that a player character is defined. And so, even though this is an animal, it's just its class is animal rather than it having a player class. And the classes here are certainly rules dependent. So one way to, and so this is what you found in the D20 or in the SRD. This is actually the plugin. So yeah, under MindGene, no, here D20PRO, common, no, not that. Nope, that's the JavaFX thing. I forget where we found the rules last time. Here, rules. So these rules definitions, I think, are what you were looking at. And here you can see this is the definition of that armor class modifier, for instance. This chain of additives here is defined in this under so under sources, this is under, so D20PRO sources, MindGene, D20 common rules, and this is where a lot of the specific rule implementation is happening that is unique.
To this, we saw this package. In general, you see again it contains not so. You see that it's small, so that it almost doesn't contain logic. So right. I think in our case, not the problem but the task, which I see logical task, is to. So we would like to understand in a system way, right? All the places in the sources where all decisions, all rules is handled. And then when we have this set, we could study them, we could analyze them, and then we could check. We could think how to make them pluginable, how to push them into framework. So, but again, it's a question of time.
So this is the definition I was looking for here. So this defines a D&D creature. So here we have, for instance, what is a cleric and what makes them unique in this system of D&D or Dungeons and Dragons. And again, so the logic here is predominantly affecting what is available as a character rather than what is available as a, so here let's actually open Sorcerer, which this character has. And so this creature capability Spellcaster is this Spells tab. And then it enables this Sorcerer list. And at this stage then gives access to this special spell editor, which allows them to go through and choose from an imported list of spells and build, spells, and then defines this this spells per day system down here, which again is part of the rules for Dungeons and Dragons. It is worth noting that unlike a board game, many of the rules that a role-playing game has are far more abstract and occur at a person-to-person level. So they're much more of a social interaction rule set rather than something that can be represented on the tabletop. And so the rules that we're automating in D20 Pro are predominantly focused on the strategic elements like movement, combat, penalties, bonuses, to movement and combat. And so I think that's part of it, is that it's actually not that complex of a logic set. It's mostly just it's large lookup tables. It's a lot of data entry to define rules.
Okay, thank you for this thought. Yeah, and I believe that it makes sense.
So this also has some rule-specific things, such as defining size. So this is where I don't know whether this is a valid source file. Is this actually in use? So this thing says D20 Rules. Again, this is fairly basic, but this defines what are your statistics, what are your sizes. The size is here. Where is it? I'm suddenly not seeing it, but I know it's here. Right here. Yeah. So this list here, you can see, is defined here. And then, so again, it strikes me that a lot of these rules are scattered. They're all over the place, right? So this seems to define the basic rules associated with the character sheet, but does not, why is it here? And then why are there additional rules here? And then more rules here? I don't know the answer to that. Unfortunately.
Yeah, you really understand my question actually, because usually when you study, I mean, now we are not in state here, to answer this question. I mean, to answer if it's good or not good, because maybe we don't see something, and maybe some thinking, some approaches is in the sources that we haven't found. But in general, yeah, it's good to consider a system. Like when we have existed code base, it's good to consider it as like architectural layers. Okay, this is UI. This is you know it. This is like helpers. This is rules package. This is that, and then because at this stage it's just it's a question of terminology. Just when you say rule, you have own vision. What is rule? And when we hear this rule, okay, we have own vision. Yeah, please show us this. Okay.
No, I'm testing while we're talking. It's because I'm trying to see what happens. So I made that change here to change this to test. Of course, I didn't look at those errors, but yeah, it doesn't. I don't see that relating to this. If we look in here for, this is saying fortitude. Of course, the fact that it's saying fortitude and not fort is, well, I'll do it. is disturbing. Now, it's possible that my build is currently not working properly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay, there are errors in my build, so this didn't actually get built in, so it would need to be tested.
Yeah, in general,
I am not a Java guy, like I said before, and so every time that I do a poll, and if there's any problems with my build, it takes me 3 to 4 times as long to figure out how to fix it. So I haven't actually gone through and adjusted this since I did a poll. And I think it's probably just in importing a new jar into the library and removing an old one. But this stuff, so honestly, there's going to be some poking that has to happen just to go in and make some changes to some of these fields and see if it affects. This is why I wanted to give you an overview of the character, of the interface, so you can validate whether or not this, for instance, changing this affects the game world positively. And then we know that this is actually in use and can note it as such. And I can also try to do some of this on my end as well, if that would be helpful.
okay.
I'm certainly here to work with you guys, although I don't want to get in the way.
Yes, understandable.
There's, depending on how you work, that's always a concern.
So saying one more time, then yeah, please tell me.
What I was suggesting is that by going in, so you're currently able to run the project directly from Eclipse, am I correct?
Yeah, from both Eclipse and also from Maven, from just Ant, from console. It's
Right.
both.
So what I'm suggesting is actually making changes to some of these text entries that we can locate and identify the location where they are displayed, or should be displayed. And for instance, by going in here and changing this to test and saving if I had my build functioning, if I then saw test replace tiny or replace fine, that I would know that this is live, that this D20 rules file is being utilized. And
Yeah.
I mean, it's not, I realize that that's not a crazy concept. It's, a pretty standard one. But unfortunately, without having, I don't know that this is specifically the information we're looking for from Matt, compared to some of the more complex questions we'll have for him. And so in the time between now and meeting with him on Friday, if this is part of the investigation, is to locate these rules files, this is about the only way that I know of right now to do this, is to actually go in and try making changes and see what effect that has in the game space.
Okay. Tobias, one more question. Okay. The question is, let's imagine ideal world, and we have already implemented this pluginable system. So how you see it? For example, what I could imagine. For example, we introduced or maybe improved existed pluginable approach. We introduced some XML, for example, format. We introduced a way to introduced a way to write XMLs like a syntax or domain-specific language, like how rules behave and what its influence. Maybe even some scripting, for example, like inside to define rule, not to go to Java sources, but to put script somewhere in XML and then it works, and it has access. Yeah, how you see it? How you see it?
Because we, in the end, spending money on the project is based around us being able to make money from the project. There's 2 parts to it. The content that we're talking about potentially doing as a built-in, the OGL content, that will end up just supplying for free to our clients. And so how we have that data accessible is not a very big deal. It can be public. But for the plugin, we want to have something similar to these, where we have compiled jars that define this is basically a more secure build. Sure, jars can be decompiled, but this is a more secure way for us to deploy the rule plugin, and then having with that, let's see, I'm just going to grab an example. This is very deeply buried. This is a different problem. But currently the way that manually specified files are stored is in a campaign. So it's a campaign resource, manually specified. And then here, you'll see that this is actually the list of available spells, for instance, to this current game system. And so when you import, when we instantiate the plugin, it should build out the support text files in the manually specified folder for the campaign that it's associated with. And I think that still makes a lot of sense, mostly because removing this resource dependency here is one that we need to address it's a larger scope problem, this campaign resource. Because right now, if you look here, every one of these has a resource folder. And this is a problem we want to fix down the road, but it's not one that I think we need to fix right now, because I don't have a solution that makes sense to prevent collisions.
Okay, so ideal vault, you see, it's a set of jar file, and every jar file is responsible for its function in some way, right?
Or there's a master jar file, such as in the plugin system here, where this is responsible for all of the functionality of this plugin, which is Dungeons & Dragons 4th edition, the 4E.
Okay, so it's understood. So through this, through changing these jar files, then you're able to change logic, rules, and behavior of a game, just providing different jar files.
Yes.
Okay,
Again,
but also rules, you see that one thing is rules. One thing is a jar file. It's like Java sources, like source code. But another thing is some definitions. And I think about, some XML or about some scripting, which allows you to mix a little bit source code, but also to mix with XML. Then you could specify something. I could imagine that something could be done through XML, just some logic.
yes. And that's what I'm suggesting goes into the manually specified location. So that way you have, specific to your campaign, these XML files, whether they're these text data files, or XML formatted data, or they're XML scripting. This exposes and allows for customization on a per campaign
Yes,
level.
it's clear. And actually, another question is, if we answer question why we need plugins, you think sometimes usually plugins are required. Let me just, maybe it's stupid, but usually plugins are required when third party guys, like third party developers, also wants to extend system to create own plugins. In your situation, is it true? Do you
Yes, there are two reasons. One is that we have, to be able to profit from the 5th edition rules in a legitimate way, we need to be able to support what is considered their full rule set, which is not the OGL. It's the published licensed version of the rules. And in order to do that, we have to go into partnership with the company Wizards of the Coast, and we're well underway on that end as well, by the way. And the way that the partnership is structured is that they will take a percentage of the sale for the product that contains their rules. If our whole product contains their rules, then everybody who buys our product, we pay some to Wizards of the Coast, even if those people don't ever play 5th edition. If they're playing Pathfinder or 3.5 or one of the other game systems we already support, we would still have to give Wizards of the Coast a percentage of every one of those sales. By having the rules for 5th edition in a plugin and isolated as a single sellable item that we can distribute through our marketplace and install, then they only will have to receive profit, or the percentage from a product that contains the 5e rule set, which is the plugin. So from a business need, we need to separate the rules so that way we're not having to pay them for selling a game of checkers, right? When that has nothing to do with their game.
When you say checkers, you mean that your system also supports checkers?
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah. So currently, it's a grid, and so you can, if we go into the library, create. Oops. Let's go to maps, create, and I'll say empty checkers. Where chess is it 34 across? Sorry, 24 or 34. Forget how many squares.
What would be for 4? I mean, it doesn't matter.
Anyway, I'm not sure why that's not letting me type. That's funny. There we go. So we'll say 24, just, no, that's way too many. Is it 12? It's 12, something small like that, right? And then by importing a graphic with a chessboard, for instance.
Yeah, it's good that you show this.
Let's do chessboard. Grab an image here. Use that one. Let's do. Just grab that. This will make it nice and easy here. Folder. Chess. So let's cancel this from an image file and say go here. That's the chessboard. And 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Yeah, 8 to 8.
8, right. So then may not be able to quite scale this right, but that'll work for now. And next, and call this chess. Board games. Finish. And so then here, let's get rid of these guys. We've got our game board, and then I could go into our pieces here, say pawn, just to give you a very quick idea. And then this guy in there.
Yeah, it's great. It's great that you're showing it. And by the way, it's impressive.
Yeah, there's a lot about this that, I mean, when he started working on this, it was a long time ago. Actually, we can just do this. Let's do copy image and do from clipboard. So okay. Bye. So now clone.
Okay. Then it's possible. So you could define all the rules, how to move.
Exactly.
What should be to what shouldn't, and then you should save. You could save the settings.
And that would be a plugin, right? That would be a rules plugin that prevents you from moving your pawn like this, for instance.
Yeah. Okay. So this in general, we should think about this task and about your system as a just like table-based something. Like it could be everything, right? It could be something what is moved, and it could be everything. Like even chess, right? In some way. Okay. It's very.
Yeah, I'm glad that we actually touched on that. I think that's very insightful.
Okay.
And you can also tell the player to now have that. So what I've done is I've selected all these guys here, and pressing O, you change ownership. You because as it is right now, these aren't owned by the player, so they can't touch them. But I can say they're owned by the player demo or by publicly owned, so anybody can own it, can move it. Just to quickly explain what this is for, what we predominantly use this for, publicly owned we use with touch tables or touch technology, where we want to have one table with multiple players at it. And this allows anybody to move the object. And so that just frees it up so it can be moved by anyone. If we were playing, if you and I were playing, for instance, and I'm not very good at chess, as you can imagine, since I couldn't remember how many squares it was, it would make sense to have the ownership, if these were your pieces and you were the demo, and then I couldn't move them. Oh, I can because I'm the host. Well, that's a different problem. But normally, if I were a player, not a host, then I would be limited in my movement. So.
Okay. Yeah.
Anyway, that's just ownership, just quickly. Yes. So as far as how to think about the game or how to think about the space, you're right. It's anything that can be represented in a 2D grid is what this game system currently supports. We want to expand the board down the road to support no grid, so floating point. Right now, the grid system is actually based off of a unit of 1, and that unit of 1 just happens to be whatever you set this this grid size into. So when I go back into the library and to a map and if I create an empty map and set a grid size of 250 by 250, say high res. This is a very densely packed grid, and by taking a token, it's going to be very, very small in there. Let's pull up the roster so I can actually select it. It's going to be the last one here. I don't know which one it is. That's unfortunate. Okay, let's go back over to here. There it is. And changing alter its size to colossal. Now we have an object that it looks like it's moving without a grid, but it's actually obviously moving on a grid. This is one of the ways that we've considered cheating to enable what would appear to be free movement, would be to have a grid and then maybe a size multiplier. So the resolution of your grid is a multiplication factor on the size. As we saw in Eclipse under rules for size, here, this defines what these sizes are in terms of spaces here. So the number of squares that they occupy. Having a multiplier, we can actually have 10 squares be one game square. Meaning that diminutive would fit in a 10 square space, and so on and so forth. And these aren't specifically that, by the way. These are actually modifiers, but it gives I think that the general concept is sound. But again, this is more of a hack to try to introduce what equates to what feels more like a floating point movement rather than an integer movement, without actually having to move to a floating point grid system.
Okay, Tobias, I think
Overload?
No, it's not overload. I think now we have enough to rewatch and just to check, because you really provided enough clues, and I think for the first time it's a very good demo, and maybe you have something else to show, but I would say that if you have some questions related to UI and so on, then maybe again next week we again have some demo or some when we could ask questions and again do the same thing, because now I feel that it's really lots of information. but it's fun, I would say.
Great. Yeah, that's exciting. I'm glad that you guys are really getting a feel for it, and definitely any questions you come up with, anything you want demonstrated, let me know. As I said, I'm very available. I can make time. If I have advanced notice, I can make time at most points during the day or night. I'm used to working server administration, so I'm used to having to work in change hours, the 1 a.m. to 5 a.m. so as to deploy for thousands of users without them noticing. So that can happen. I can meet you on your daytime schedule if you need to. Just when we can, this is a better time slot, obviously.
Okay. Then now it's really so your demo provided lots of things to think, and I also asked these questions about plugins because I also think, and I think we have maybe not a plan for now, but at least we have things to check, and I think this the rest of week, so this 2 days we will continue studying sources and trying to answer our questions, check how it's done, and also create new questions. But again, I think it's good if we have a stand-up tomorrow as well. So, like first 2 weeks, let's have stand-ups every day, and we really have a feeling of each other and connected.
So as I said, what I will try to do is have for you a document this evening, my time this evening, so morning your time, which details the differences between the 5th edition rule set and our current existing rule sets. And I'll cite a specific rule set. I won't just say between all of them, this is the differences. So we'll base it off of a specific rule set that's currently implemented and highlight the differences and suggestions for how to build upon what is already there. And again, please check the sources. Make sure that you've got the most recent build. As Matt said that he would be uploading the source code for the plugins yesterday or today. So.
Okay. Great. So,
everybody.
Then, Tobias, I think it's enough for today. Thank you very much, and I think it's a good demo. So let's see each other tomorrow or on stand-up time. And I think you saved lots of time of Matt because you answered a lot, and now we should concentrate on more more technical things, talking to Matt on Friday.
Excellent. Excellent.
Thank you, and bye for
Thank
now.
you, everybody.
Bye, guys.
Thank you, Tobias. Have a good day.
Bye, guys.